evening. This is the India Development Debate right here on ET Now. I'm Supriya, Shrinate, and with me is my colleague and co-anchor Sandeep Gurumurthy. Now, Flipkart's big billion day is here as it signed the biggest e-commerce deal in the world. This also marks the biggest FDI inflow into the country. Ending weeks of speculation, the US retail giant Walmart has officially signed a deal to acquire a controlling stake of 77% in Flipkart for $16 billion, valuing Flipkart at $21 billion. Walmart said it will support Flipkart's ambitions of going public, but did not put a date on it. So who stays on and who goes? Flipkart's co-founder Binny Bansal, Tencent Holdings, Tiger Global and Microsoft will retain part of their stake, while SoftBank will walk away with $4 billion. In fact, $4.77 billion. In what is a bittersweet moment for the poster boy of Indian e-commerce, co-founder Sachin Bansal will exit the company by selling his entire stake and walking away with $1 billion there.
The deal is expected to turn the tide for startup India, which for long has been criticized for its poor exit rate, because the Walmart $16 billion deal will be a huge validation, possibly open the window for more exits. Analysts say it is hard for any MNC to ignore the Indian online market, which is expected to clock volumes of $200 billion by 2026. India is all set to become the battleground for foreign giants vying for a bigger pie of Indian e-commerce. A big billion deal and what it means for the Indian startup ecosystem at large. That's what we're discussing tonight on the India Development Debate. Before we take it across to a stellar panel that's joining us live on the India Development Debate tonight, let me take it across to Chandra Srikanth, my colleague from Bengaluru, who's been tracking every twist and turn of what is a landmark deal. Indeed, Chandra, a big day for Indian e-commerce, isn't it? A $16 billion bet on India and on the Indian internet space.
That's right. This is a landmark day, whichever way you look at it. And it's a validation because, as you said, Indian startups have been criticized for long for the poor exit rate that they've delivered to investors. But finally, 10 years after being founded as a 2 BHK apartment in Koramangala, to a valuation of $21 billion. That's something. Now, as the upside for Flipkart is pretty clear in this deal. It will finally get a big strategic investor with deep pockets. It will give it ammunition to battle Amazon. But if you look at the upside for Walmart, investors seem to be a little skeptical. If you look at the tank, the Walmart stock price has taken in the US. So this is clearly going to be a long-term bet as far as Walmart is concerned. Importantly, they've also kept a window open for a possible Flipkart listing in the future. But I think that's some time away because Flipkart will have to meet certain financial milestones. As you said, this is a bittersweet moment because while Binny Bansal stays on, Sachin Bansal walks away, but he's walking away with $1 billion. So hopefully we will see some of that coming back into the ecosystem. But for now, Flipkart's going to remain an independent entity, both brand-wise, operations-wise, and maybe in the coming days, we will also see that additional funding coming in from Alphabet, which hasn't been announced today.
Indeed, a lot to watch out for. That Alphabet funding is something that people will keep a close eye on. And Chandra, thanks for joining us and, of course, for breaking all the big stories on this mega Walmart-Flipkart deal. Let's take it across to the stellar panel that's joining us on the show this evening. Vani Kola, MD Kalari Capital, Mekin Maheshwari, former Chief People Officer at Flipkart, Gurcharan Das, author and commentator, Madhavan Narayanan, senior journalist, and we'll also be joined by Haresh Chawla, partner True North and an active angel investor. Thank you all so much for joining us on the India Development Debate. Vani, I have to start with you. Is this in some sense a coming of age moment for the Indian startup ecosystem? And does this deal in a sense finally validate the investor value and the fact that you can get profitable exits in a market like India, which has been a sore point of sorts?
I came back to India a little over a decade ago in 2006 and with a lot of hope and aspiration, but really it was really hope and no one could have really predicted this moment. I remember meeting the founders early 2008 and when they were just selling 100 books a day or so. I do think this is a celebratory moment, coming of age moment, not just for Flipkart. It's shareholders, investors and employees, founders, but also because this will truly now set a different momentum for Indian startup ecosystem and a validation. So I definitely think this is a historical moment, in fact, for startup ecosystem.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the sentiment is being shared by people all across the board, whether they're investors or entrepreneurs, and everybody's been lauding it, from competition to people like Vijay Shekhar Sharma and Kunal. Well, everybody's lauded this coming of age moment. But Mr. Maheshwari and Mekin Maheshwari, I'll come to you on the other question. While it's great news as far as investors are concerned, they're walking away with big bucks. I mean, SoftBank, just 8 months back, they pumped in about $2.5 billion, walking away with $4.77 billion today. The question really is, what does this deal also mean for entrepreneurs? I mean, being an entrepreneur is not an easy task. You wear your failure like your badge of honor and all of that. And then you have a deal like this that comes and changes the contours of the space that it is in. So what sort of a message, a cue do entrepreneurs really, drive from this?
I think, like Vani said, it is gonna energize the ecosystem. I think there's been, for the Indian startup ecosystem, there have been a lot of people who have been naysayers, and at this moment, like a lot of them come back to my mind, where for various reasons, people wouldn't necessarily believe in the value that has gotten created. Right, and this massive deal, happening at this stage. So the value that's gotten created is $21 billion, which would peg Flipkart at about 18th or 19th in the publicly listed companies in the country. And for most entrepreneurs, what they are after is trying to create value. In some sense, this shows that it is possible. This shows that exits are possible. This shows that value creation is possible. The Indian consumer story is real. It's possible to use technology to create value. So I would think that a lot of entrepreneurs would take heart from this and go after this, would go and create a lot more, hopefully.
Oh yes, I think it shows that the Indian market is for real and that value creation is happening. It's not sort of this bubble that sort of keep getting created, that value creation is happening. That's an important part. Gurcharan Das, what does this deal really mean for the latent value of the Indian market, the retail business in India? I mean, Walmart has sort of been in India now, for the last decade or so. They've had a few false starts. They've sort of got in, got out, had a few issues, regulatory setbacks. And yet, after 10 years, they're still willing to write a $16 billion check in the Indian market. What does that tell you about the latent value of the Indian retail market?
Well, I think what this tells us are a number of very, very important lessons. One, that Walmart has worked the last few years to neutralize the criticism that might come from the retail trade, because they've made now in this deal the retail trade as partners. They've been working in India for the last 2 to 5 years, basically selling wholesale to retailers. And what they're going to use are those retail spots for the last mile delivery. And that what will do is upgrade the quality of that retailer, because the management input that Walmart will ensure in terms of quality, information system, the kind of people who work with the Kirana stores are going to be very large beneficiaries. But what we all forget is that the biggest beneficiary out of this is the farmer, because the reason why Walmart can dare to take on Amazon is because Walmart has something that Amazon does not, and that is the ability to take fresh farm produce through a very, very sophisticatedly developed cold chain, which they have developed in 35 countries. And that cold chain will allow a farmer to bring the product It will bring Walmart to bring the product to the consumer. So and it'll be a great win for both, because today, for example, you buy tomatoes at 20 rupees a kilo. The farmer today in India gets only 4 or 5 rupees. The rest of the money is gone in the middleman at the mandi, from the artiya to the wholesaler to the retailer to the rediwala. Now, in countries where Walmart operates, such as Philippines, China, Indonesia, and all, what I have found is that the same tomatoes, the farmer will get 8 or 10 rupees, and the consumer will pay only 15 rupees, because you don't have that long middle chain which benefits from the sale of these products. Plus, you don't have the loss that farmer suffers because there is the cold chain does not exist. So, if you ask me, the biggest gainer of this is in the long term. It won't happen overnight. It will take time. But even in Africa, when they went to Nigeria, it was for the first 2 years, they didn't put up stores. They worked with farmers to bring up the quality to a certain level. This is where Reliance Fresh failed. I had hoped that companies like Reliance Fresh and all who went into supermarkets would do this. They failed to do it. And I know that in the long term, the farmer will be a very major beneficiary. I don't mean all Indian farmers will happen, because there are many states which have APMC laws which do not permit it.
Okay.
The other big benefit now for our country is jobs.
Mr. Gurusharan
You know,
Das,
when you
let me
add up
come to
all
you.
the new
Mr.
jobs
Gurusharan
that are
Das.
going to come.
Yes. Mr. Gurusharan Das, just hold on to that thought, because that's a point we're going to cover a little later in the show. I just want to get every panelist to speak. I'll just come to you, Mr. Gurusharan Das. Give me a minute. But Harish Chawla, you're joining us right here, and we're talking about this big deal. I have a very frank and a straight question to ask. Does this also pave the way for other large exits, and does this also mean, from an investor point of view, does this deal put India back on the high radar of large internet giants in the US, the large companies that could be looking at India in the internet space?
Absolutely. I think there is a fundamental resetting of how India stands in the minds of US strategics now. So you had the large global players who didn't have to set up offices here, but could get Indian audiences, which was Facebook and Google and WhatsApp and stuff like that, which really are global businesses, but they operate, or they don't have to be in the country or set up huge operations, because they just provide an information layer over other businesses. But clearly, with Walmart taking such a big bet on India, and proving that that they are very serious about what they want to do in India, I think a lot of US strategics will now start looking. They've been so long waiting for the VCs to invest in India and see how things turn out. But my sense is this will suddenly put the gas on everybody, saying you rather get into India now, because if Walmart has probably done its diligence and figured out that this is the right time to enter, it may make sense for them to look at India very seriously and not wait for the VCs to take the first hits in several categories. So clearly exits are going to be easier to look at. So far we had the Chinese coming and for the last couple of years try and look at smaller players or people or companies that could be, a string of pearls approach is being tried by some of the Chinese strategics. I think you'll find US companies now coming in and playing a serious game here.
But Harish, just to pick the point that a quick follow-up to you itself, and you wrote this just a few days ago, does this in a sense also set the stage for the big showdown, between Alibaba, Amazon and Walmart? And is this the new battleground for global dominance in retail in some sense?
Yes, I mean, if you look at where are the pockets of growth around the world, there is Asia and there is China. I mean, including India in Asia. So I think these 3 or 4 markets, India, Indonesia, China, Malaysia. These are Indonesia and Malaysia to some smaller extent, but these are the markets where there's growth. And if you look at Walmart, it grows at what 2-3% a year in its home markets, and internationally it's been having a mixed experience over the last few years. So therefore, I think clearly India is the accessible market. There is not much you can do in China. Even though Walmart has been there for several years, it's not made a huge dent. Amazon clearly exited that market. Even other players are finding it extremely difficult to do business there. So India is a large secular opportunity where the downside, you may pay more for an asset here. But if you build it well, there is very limited downside for a strategic player. He's going to be in a billion and a half consumer market, which over the next 20 years is going to become another China. And what can you go wrong with? You can go wrong with a bit of timing, a bit of amount of money you pay. But to not play in this market, especially now that a lot of dust settled in the e-commerce space over the last 1 year. Clearly, the market is split. About 70 to 80% market share in several categories between Flipkart and Amazon. So I think this is the battleground really, where and really the last battleground till Africa opens up or becomes a viable market to enter. The large single market where you can set up infrastructure, where the the rule of law is clearly defined. It's the place to be, and I think Walmart has taken the decision at the right time. I don't know whether people will like the price that they paid. I mean, clearly the stock market doesn't seem to like it too much. It's down by about 3% right now. But the fact is that to not make this play when Flipkart is a substantial player in the market, and secondly, if it has offline ambitions, clearly merging or creating Flipkart into a holding company, and as regulations allow you to add offline retail into the business, will be a play for Walmart. So Walmart may probably spend another 15-20 billion in this market, either investing in infrastructure or buying retail franchises once regulations open up, and really build a solid business.
Right.
So the dust has settled. So now the only challenge is for Alibaba actually, which really needs to figure out its game plan. Yeah.
Right. Harish, there's a reason why you call it the India will be the stadia of the battle royale, like you call it. But I kind of buy that point. But I'll go across to Madhan Narayan, and Mr. Narayan, India startup space has been flushed with foreign capital. It's well established now that the battle lines will be drawn between an Amazon, between an Alibaba, and Walmart. The question that comes to a lot of our minds is, where is the India startup story amidst all of this? Or this is how you believe it was expected to pan out? Global ambitions with deep pockets to fund those ambitions, and that's the natural course that kind of foreign capital would have taken.
Yes and no. Let me first, acknowledge what Harish Chawla was saying just now. He sketched out the context so well, that it's essentially a no-brainer when you have 1.3 billion people in the world's fastest growing economy with a whole load of techies. Let's not forget we are stacking this on top of the software and IT revolution. So it's a bit of a no-brainer for any e-commerce company with an interest in technology, as well as the size and scale of the market, with a supply chain possibility of the kind Gurcharan Das elaborated on coming in. But having said that, let's come down to earth a bit. We are talking about what Kashyap Deora famously called the this of that syndrome. Flipkart was the Amazon of India, so Walmart was a natural buyout category, and although Flipkart still wants to go IPO if possible, essentially we have lost some of that nationalist plot and protectionist plot. So to the extent that the this of that part succeeds in India, based on a consumer boom and a certain high growth story, the startup boom is alive and kicking. The deeper question of whether we are going to have truly giant killer technology companies with hot technologies coming up is a game that is still wide open. That depends on a huge number of paradigmatic questions on where the world at large as a whole is going in terms of growth as well as technology. So that part of the question remains unanswered. But Me Too companies with mobile apps and anybody trying to call themselves a startup is not going to work. There has to be clarity and focus and proper funding. Let me also add that from Walmart's point of view, this seems to me like a pre-listing momentum investing, because Walmart is only partly a retail player in this game.
Sure.
It's partly also got a VC character, look at how SoftBank has made nearly $5 billion in this game.
True.
So Walmart may be looking at a similar windfall gain 2 years down the line.
Sure.
So Walmart is keeping its options open. The shrewdest part of the game, the most untold story in this is that Walmart is betting on an FDI in brick and mortar retail, in which case there is a regulatory risk. On the other hand, Flipkart has a huge bunch of techies and Walmart has its own technology. So there is a demand chain as well as supply chain story playing out.
Right.
So this is of course the retail part on which I'll talk later.
Sure.
But essentially the startup story is alive,
And
but
kicking.
whether it's kicking or not depends on details.
Okay, you're saying the startup stories are, Vani, like you said, I think it's a day to celebrate. It's a sort of day, a coming of age day of sorts for Indian startups. But I don't want this issue to sort of hijack the debate. And yet I can't not ask this, because a lot of people, would be wondering, where is India in this? At the end of the day, it's now going to be a play between Amazon and Walmart. Yes, they're saying Flipkart will remain a separate unity and will sort of try to retain its identity. But in some sense, is this, what do you tell people who have these concerns that where is India in this whole startup story? Or would you say that, this is a natural progression for startups within the business of unlocking value, and a massive value unlocking exercise just unfolded today?
I think we are over anguished on is there still a nationalistic plot here or not. I think we have to go back to 2006 when these companies really started, at which point I remember sort of the many points of debates on lack of local confidence. We can say that SoftBank made double the money in less than a year, but I remember last year Flipkart, there was a lot of speculation, even glee in fact, that Flipkart is not worth more than 5 billion or 6 billion or whatever. So I really do think that there was a need for sort of a mirror or a wake up from external capital to show our own potential for India. There was just no local capital to fund this type of risk capital. Now, I'm a pragmatist and I'm an optimist. So I really believe this story had to have happened. That doesn't necessarily mean the future is given away. Flipkart is only one small part of what the trillion-dollar Indian story, the digital story that we have a potential to unfold. And what I hope and what I believe is out of this Flipkart kind of stories will emerge innovation, entrepreneurs who can compete at the global level, much as Amazon and Walmart competed with each other in US and so on and so forth. And today, in retail, you have H&M, we are not having that debate. We have Starbucks, we are not having that debate. So Flipkart is just one part of the story. I really believe that there is a rise of momentum and spirit of entrepreneurship, and it will triumph to build the next global companies out of India. But you do need a start somewhere, and I think this was a great start, and it needed that boost from foreign capital. But already over the last year or two, I'm seeing an emergence of interest from local LPs and local capital investing into entrepreneurs, and that's why I call it a celebratory movement. Not just because some people at Flipkart get to take home money, that too I really am happy for them, but this is because what the next decade can unfold in the entrepreneurship culture and ecosystem in the company. And I think we'll see a lot more angel investing happening. We'll see corporate houses start investing into startups. We may see experienced people coming in and mentoring startups. It was really difficult to get independent board members to join startups at all. When we would try, it would be, why should I take that risk? So I do think that this is a coming of age in more than one way, not just for Flipkart, but for just the Indian opportunity.
Okay. Yeah, Vani, you raise an important point there, that this is just one piece of the pie that has been given away. And so let's not just talk about the entire Indian pie that has been perhaps offered. But Gurucharan Das, coming to you, sir, Walmart's market cap is at $260 billion, and that's nearly half of its $500 billion in revenues. Amazon, on the other hand, trades at roughly 4 times its $200 billion revenue pie. Walmart is clearly valued for its business, and Amazon seems to be valued for the potential. Now, given the fact that Walmart has made this bet here in India betting upon Flipkart's potential. Is this deal in India going to change the dynamics for Walmart and for Amazon back home?
I think that's a very good question. And this is precisely a question that I was discussing in a private conversation with somebody from Walmart in New York. And Walmart regards this as a global test market for its ability to change its business model. They have realized that they need to have both an online, offline business. This is one of the reasons last week they sold their company in UK, partly to pay, by the way, for the 16 billion that they have paid for Flipkart. So they are seeing this. This has actually global ramifications, not just for Walmart, but for the entire big box industry, which has realized that you can't work the old model, and so and frankly for India, those of you or those of some commentators, I think Chandra, who was speaking, talked about it, a bittersweet moment, and somebody else talked about the fact that about nationalism. Nationalism is reflected when governments protect not their capital, not their industrialists, but their citizens and their farmers. And this is the best thing for our consumers and for our farmers. That's what good governments do. They don't go protectionist. And the countries that are going protectionist now are going to suffer because they have not learned that lesson. And so that's why I'm happy. I'm happy because this in a previous program, somebody was bemoaning the fact, oh, but we don't have laws yet, which how could Walmart come in and just take over this thing? They don't realize that ultimately the competition this will create. And I was telling you that people have worked out that the number of jobs this $16 billion value will create, whether it's in logistics, it will be in food processing, it will be in home delivery, it will be on farms, it will be a huge, and the upgrading of the Indian retail trade, because they will work, the points of delivery will be the Indian retailer.
Sure.
And it will be like a shop in shop,
right.
Walmart in there.
Right.
And so this is a very, very important moment for the country.
Right.
And this
I take that point.
pseudo-nationalism,
Sure.
protectionism,
is of no.
we should get over that.
Okay, I take that point, and I agree with Haresh and you when you say it's re-rating India. But I mean, just to sort of clear the air, it's $16 billion is not going to be invested in the market, so to say. I mean, $2 billion is a fresh investment. So I think it's important that we temper our expectations when we talk of job creation potential on the back of this investment. But I take that point. Madhav Narayan, quick point to you, and then I need to go to Haresh Chawla after that. Much like Walmart, that has made its biggest ever acquisition and will need to make it work, Amazon is not going to sit, idle. I mean, Jeff Bezos, this is a huge market, and Amazon needs to win in India, having given up China. How do you expect Jeff Bezos to react? What will Amazon do? And that in some sense is great news for Indian consumers, isn't it?
Yeah, this is my chance to bring you an exclusive one-liner for this India development debate. E-commerce is dead. Long live algo commerce. This is my takeaway one-liner for today. Algo commerce is going to rule in the coming days because everybody's got a hand phone these days that is connected to the internet. So there is no longer about just retail and e-commerce. There is algorithmic pumping of demand and measurement of data. Data science is going to determine things. So what used to be called the economies of scale in the 20th century will be replaced by what I call economies of algorithms. So that will create the scale and the operation. And Amazon is a king in that. Walmart also has deep technology. In fact, I've just written about how Anand Rajaraman and Venki Harinarayan, who have both powered both Amazon and Walmart at various points in their career through startups that were acquired by these two companies. So algo trading is going to be a big deal in which Amazon is very clearly on the cutting edge. Let me also, this is my moment to tell you that it's not simple to compare Walmart and Amazon anymore, because Amazon is more than a retailer now or an e-commerce company. It's got Amazon Web Services, it's got Amazon Prime, so it's a, it's investing in Hollywood. It's only a question of time before it comes into Bollywood. So Amazon is a diversified internet era, digital era player. Walmart is a Johnny-come-lately to the party, which has learned quite fast on the job, but it's got its supply chain strengths, and Amazon has got its demand strength. And so we're going to see a very interesting time ahead. And all I can tell you is that many of us are, I think, being slightly out of date in using old-fashioned yardsticks to compare. We are entering the digital age commerce. Right. Things are going to be very different from what you imagine. Please be talking to some more geeks the next time you want to have some wine.
Let's just carry forward with the algorithms bit, if I may. And you know, Mekin, I have to come to you because as things are and as things stack up, is India going to witness Amazon versus the rest? Because Google via Alphabet is also likely to come in at a later stage. You already have Microsoft as one of the investors in Flipkart now. Is this how the retail battle is likely to pan out? And Amazon versus the rest of the crowd?
I don't see it that way. I think while these are investors, there is Tencent, there is Microsoft. I think, and even what Walmart has said today, and I would expect it to basically not do any damage. Like, let Flipkart run. It's figured a way out of competing hard with Amazon and doing well, and you don't want to mess with that. It's like, how does this play out? Like Madhav was saying, what happens? What are the avenues in which Amazon competes, and what are some of those avenues that this new Walmart, Flipkart, Microsoft, Tencent entity starts competing in? I think those are, if any, they are longer term plays. I don't see any of those happening immediately over the next year or two. I think next year or two, what we're going to see is possibly slowly Walmart supply chain strengths starting to benefit Flipkart. Walmart's strength in grocery and farms starting to benefit, and grocery as a category has been open both for modern retail as well as e-commerce, and nobody's really made massive headway. With Walmart coming in, what Flipkart has a chance to do is go out and win that category big, and I would see those happening in the much shorter term era. Is it possible that Flipkart, Microsoft combine and along with Walmart compete on Azure, on web services in the Indian market? Yes, of course. Do I see it happening in the next 2 years? Very unlikely.
Fair enough.
So I would still see it primarily as a Amazon, Flipkart.
Okay, fair point indeed, Harish. And I hope you don't sort of find me skeptical for asking this question, but does this deal also sort of validate the fact that succeeding in India means losing a lot of money upfront, and that is sort of an acknowledgement of sorts made by Walmart as well. If you look at their presentations, there's very little talk on paths to profitability, which we wonder, when are these companies going to turn a profit? They're saying that we hope to reduce losses over a period of time. That's about as much as Walmart is acknowledging. So there is this acknowledgement that succeeding in India means pumping in a huge amount of money upfront and with little clarity on the paths to profitability.
Yes, absolutely. My sense is, remember, this is a war for market share between players, and another level, market share from the offline retail customers, and then a market share of the new customer who's just for the first time in India, probably starting consumption. So there are, if you look at it, you have to peel away the entire market. There is a fight between online players, a fight with offline retail and try and woo away the customers, and then a fight for the new emerging customer who's just trying to spend his disposable income whose family has just changed its mindset and is willing to end up saving little less and start spending more. So I think when you're fighting this kind of battle and you're really trying to make sure that you have sustainable market share in a market that's going to become one of the largest in the world, and if you leave out China, India will be the second largest market at some point of time over the next 2 decades. You clearly have to make these investment losses upfront. Now, the second challenge is that the online medium is so, your relationship is so gossamer with the customer, it's so thin that you have to keep on spending to make sure that relationship is kept alive. And that's where Amazon has come in with this beautiful concept called Prime, in which they have found a way to cement that relationship. And that's worked for them. I mean, 100 million Prime customers around the world spend 3.5 to 4 times as much as regular customers. So clearly, unless you have a clear plan as to how to cement the relationship with the customer, generate stickiness, and Prime is one aspect of it, video, media, food and grocery, again a big sticky category. Unless you really have a play in those categories, these businesses are not going to start throwing up cash anytime early. And that's fine. I mean, let's look at what Walmart is doing. It's trying to bet in a market that it believes will be valuable a decade or decade and a half from now. So I don't see why it needs to look at the path to profitability today. It doesn't need to. Now it comes down to managing stakeholders. They have low growth in the US. If they don't execute well in India, the stock market is going to start hating them. So those are the challenges they have. But on a standalone basis, if Walmart wasn't a listed company and was not under so much scrutiny, the fact is that as a private company, you would surely make these bets. Again, as I said, the price may be a few $1 billion more or less, that's not relevant. But to stay relevant on the global stage, to not be in India is a mistake that no CEO should be making.
No, I completely agree with you, and I think you're right about that in greater detail about the troika to win here, offline private labels in Prime. And you're right, Amazon has marched ahead with Prime there, and I think the only ammo that Walmart has is perhaps grocery at this stage. But Gurucharan Das, have a more direct question, not so much on the battle royale between Amazon and Walmart and Alibaba. What does this do to the domestic guys? I mean, many believe this will trigger Reliance to speed up and marry its offline brick and mortar retail business, leverage it with Jio's powerful online business. Do you see something like that happen? Do you see this deal could be a trigger for this?
Well, it's a possibility, but you know, Reliance has been a disruptor, certainly in the telecom space. Here, Reliance Fresh frankly failed, and it was a big disappointment because I had hoped that they would create the kind of cold chain and that Walmart has created around the world. And so I don't know. It's hard to, you know, this process is not going to be an overnight process. It will take time, and it's quite possible that an Indian player will come and will be able to, and maybe niche players. There'll be room for niche players, just as Walmart's USP might be fresh food. There may be a niche player who will come with something which will interest the consumer. But at the end of the day, I'm so pleased that we have some solid competition to Amazon. I was really worried that Flipkart was not going to survive. And the fact is that, as you know, I'm an advisor to the Competition Commission of India, and this is just great that we have at least, even if you have just 2 players, because I know I was running Procter and Gamble, and against Unilever, and we were in some countries only 2 players, but boy, we were fighting with each other.
Sure.
So all you need is 2 players, 2 major players, and it's great that for the Indian competitor to
all
have
you
that
need,
competition.
all you need is two major and well capitalized players in this in the e-commerce market for sure, and you for sure have them now. Vani Kola, even as we talk about the fact that this is a bet on the Indian startup community, this is also, you think, will this trigger introspection among the large Indian domestic conglomerates who've not really participated in Indian startup story? I mean, it's taken a Walmart to place the $16 billion bet at a time, and well, I think many believe that Indian conglomerates are completely missing the startup bus, and it's not as if they're not sitting on cash. There are several conglomerates, several groups sitting on a lot of cash, but holding themselves back from making a big investment in the startup space. Do you think this will trigger that thought, or do you think they'll continue to be more cautious?
Well, look, this is going to force introspection at all levels, just as we are collectively introspecting here. There's no one in industry today and over the next month, over the next 1 year, is not going to deeply reflect on assumptions, presumptions, and what does this mean way forward. Honestly, it's not that long ago that I have been in rooms full of people trying to drum up interest in the e-tail online formats, and many times the answer was skepticism whether India would take to it or not, that we have our neighborhood kirana, or one or the other, that technology entrepreneurs or technology companies cannot really solve this very complex problem of retail. And I've heard it all, right? So you have to ask, why no Indian PE players? And we have enough capital. We talk about foreign capital, but we have enough PE capital in India, and they've gone into infrastructure, they've gone into traditional businesses, but they have been unwilling to invest in these very perceived high risk and very different age models. And we have seen the venture capitalists who come from a entrepreneurial background generally be willing to take these risky bets, but they cap out after a certain amount of capital. But the PE players, who are supposed to be the next link in the capital chain, have not really engaged or embraced at all with the startup ecosystem, even today, by and large, in the technology ecosystem by and large, right? Then of course we can talk about corporates, but I do think that this will force an introspection, and introspection is good. I think this will shake up a lot of people to rethink, and that's why also I am very excited, because I believe that this will get a larger momentum and deeper engagement and collaboration to happen. I don't think any Indian corporate today will be able to look at this and say and not ask themselves, what is our game plan? Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they have to make a $16 billion acquisitions, but I do think that there will be digital strategies, whether that's internal or spin in, spin out, venture arms or collaboration, that will happen out of Indian corporates. I feel it's inevitable.
I have a quick question to ask, and I think we'll see this unfold over the next few days, if not weeks. Madhav Narayan, coming to you, what sort of regulatory hurdles do you envisage, if at all, to deal sanctions, to deal approvals for this one? Because the Swadeshi Jagran Manch is already very active. People are saying this is a backdoor entry of sorts. We're living in an election year. I mean, what are the hurdles that you envisage at all?
Yeah. Let me first say that I'm sitting here with Mr. Gurcharan Das, who's obviously a very pro-free market man. I'm only going to sketch out a scenario on what is likely rather than what should be. Okay, so I'm not giving a prescriptive approach here, but I am slightly cynical enough to understand. For instance, the All India, the Confederation of Indian Traders has already protested. We already also have something called the Association of Online Vendors of India. There has been a bit of a homegrown e-commerce startup companies, some of them even listed or fairly large, who all will be worried in some way or the other, in some cultural sense, when a big elephant walks into a room like India. Walmart is that kind of an elephant. And the Competition Commission of India 2 years ago said that it was keeping an eye on e-commerce players, but found nothing wrong. because e-commerce is, funnily enough, looks big in numbers, but as a proportion of the retail trade in India, it's very small. It's a nascent industry, so it's not yet ready for some of these regulatory things. But two kinds of regulations will happen in the coming days. There will be new kinds of monitoring by the Competition Commission of India to see if there are restrictive trade practices. So for instance, we've already witnessed in the case of airlines that the dynamic pricing model was examined by the CCI. So I have a feeling that e-commerce players also will be watched in the coming days for private label games to see whether that is some kind of a predatory pricing. Because what is happening as dumping in international trade might be observed locally. And now that brings us to politics. Whether we like it or not, the average Indian shopkeeper, for all practical purposes, is less of an entrepreneur and more of a blue-collar worker, a glorified, person who owns a shop on the face of it, but essentially is a working-class person. And there's a huge political lobby which will be looking at what will happen to these kind of people. And in an election year, I'm sure even if the Congress is discreet about the fact, because the Walmart came into India during Congress's times, there will be other regional parties raising some hard questions. So I don't see this year or two ahead as an easy cakewalk for Walmart. The acquisition is the beginning, not the end of, even if the approvals come through for this thing, there will be a lot of street level kind of things, and there will be CCI level examinations further down the line. But it's par for the course. We've seen it happen in telecom. We'll be seeing it happen. Last but not the least, let me bring in the fact that the Cambridge Analytica episode has sent a wake-up call. There will be new data-centric regulatory
Sorry, but I'll have to intervene there because I've just got the last 4 minutes left on the show, and we'll request each one of you to be a little brief there so that I cover quick ground. Harish Chawla, I have to ask you this question. Flipkart, or for a company like that, I'm presuming the dialogue so far in this phase of its journey must have been obsession with fund flows, with raising funds, looking at an IPO. How easy is it for a company to switch gears and talk about strategy that will focus more on operational efficiency, talk about long-term sustainability? And one more question on Flipkart really is that Flipkart has been very nimble-footed. It has had local management, it has taken quick decisions, executed them, but now with headquarters shifting to the US and a comparatively conservative owner, will it slow down things for Flipkart in the medium to the long term, and will that perhaps be advantage Amazon and Paytm?
No, sound is gone.
Okay, I think we lost that line with Harish Chawla. But let's take this forward with Mr. Maheshwari then. And Mr. Maheshwari, the question really for you is not so much about nimble-footedness of Flipkart, but it's more about Sachin Bansal. And while Sachin Bansal has decided to exit lock, stock, barrel, the way this has happened, and especially for Flipkart, how easy will it be to live beyond the shadow of its iconic promoter like Sachin Bansal? Yes, Binny Bansal stays on, but the presumption is largely in a professional management capacity.
Yeah, I wouldn't like to comment on what's happened. I'm happy to answer the previous question instead of Harish. Of like how nimble-footed would you want Flipkart to be, and would that be possible with the American headquarters? I think at least what Walmart understands after its acquisitions of Jet.com and a bunch of others is that it still needs to learn the online space, and at least in the press releases and the conversations, they have been saying that, hey, they will allow Flipkart to operate locally. And I would hope that that continues to happen. If that does not, I think your fears about like having a slow US headquartered company compete with Amazon here locally, which by the way, Amazon India was able to do, I think because they were also locally managed primarily. And I think Walmart's smart enough to learn most of these lessons and apply them. So I would hope that these lessons get applied. But yeah, we all know that it's very nascent. India's e-commerce market, we've just touched the top 10%, right? And I don't think any of the players right now understand how to serve the next 250 million.
Oh yes, just to put it in perspective, I think our gross sales were what, 21, 22 billion dollars, which is about as much as Alibaba did one day during its big sale day. So long way to grow. But Harish, we lost the link with you, and I'm going to ask you a different question that Supriya asked Mekin there, which is on what does this mean for Sachin Bansal? I don't think we're probably doing justice to a person who really has been an iconic promoter, iconic founder, and I think in all this talk of Walmart and Flipkart, Sachin Bansal is probably not quite in the headline. Yes, he's walking away with $1 billion, but what how big a deal, how big a day is this for Sachin? And at one level, do you think he'd be a tad disappointed that he's not going to be a part of Flipkart's journey from here on?
Hey, you guys make the headlines, and I don't see any reason why he shouldn't be in the headlines now. He's a young billionaire, built a business so quickly and exited. So, if you guys are not giving him the headlines, that's your fault. And frankly, I think Flipkart is a company which I think the founders have been extremely mature and have handled the growing pains. So, essentially, if you see what happened over the last 1.5 years, is that it handed over to professional management. So, and that transition for founders to make is difficult, and I'm extremely, it's amazing that both the founders have managed to do that, and therefore, kudos to them. They've delivered fantastic business, and they've delivered a company very maturely in the hands of a good professional team, and then brought around his exit. So, as long as you guys think carefully about the headlines you make, he should be in the headlines all the time, and he'll come back as an investor and probably set up another few businesses.
He does. It's a big day for Sachin Bansal, like it is for the Indian startup system. It really is a watershed moment, this mega deal. It's not so much about the fact that $16 billion has been invested in Flipkart, as it is about the fact that this validates the Indian startup story, that validates the potential, the inherent potential in the Indian market. Can't thank this wonderful panel enough for joining us on a day like today with their perspective on the mega Walmart-Flipkart deal.
Indeed, Walmart, that has set its sight on the Indian market for a very long time now, will finally get to every Indian who really has a smartphone. And perhaps that is why Walmart has decided to pay the top dollar, something that may have not impressed its investors in the short term, but could be a huge bet in the long term. Thanks very much, viewers, for tuning in and keeping with us on this big mega news break, Walmart and the Flipkart done deal. We take a breather here, but up next is Top 10 at 10 with Tanya Bharadwaj right here on ET Now.